Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, a federal appeals court temporarily reinstates the Trump administration's tariffs. That's after a lower court moved to block them. Jack Bradley has the latest from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where President Trump will hold a rally tomorrow. Residents break into a warehouse looking for food in the Gaza Strip. Meanwhile, officials at Yemen's main airport react after Israel strikes its last operational plane. Jason Perry reports. The Trump administration will begin revoking the visas of Chinese students. The State Department explains the process, stressing that it's a matter of national security. A federal judge extends a block on the Department of Homeland Security's attempt to revoke Harvard's foreign student enrollment. Arlene Richards brings us the details. The FBI is probing a possible cover-up of the origins of COVID-19. That's according to the Bureau's Deputy Director, Jason Blair, with more on that, plus a new virus variant in the U.S. linked to an uptick of cases in China.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. The Trump administration's tariffs are still in effect. That's after a federal appeals court today paused a lower court ruling that struck down those tariffs on a wide range of countries. NTD's Washington correspondent Jack Bradley joins us outside of Pittsburgh, where the president is expected to deliver remarks at the U.S. Steel plant tomorrow. Good evening, Jack. Let's get into the tariffs. What is the latest on the back and forth?
That's right, Tiffany. Well, a federal appeals court just reinstated just a couple hours ago Trump's ability to implement sweeping tariffs on different countries. Those refer to the so-called Liberation Day tariffs that were implemented on April 2nd. Now, this comes after yesterday's lower court ruling that said that Trump can no longer implement these sweeping tariffs, saying that it was a misuse of emergency powers. Now, the White House today is saying that it was all within legal bounds, and this was before this, just hours ago, the appeals court had made this ruling. Now, of course, these April 2nd tariffs were about a 10% base tariff on a lot of countries, mostly coming into the U.S., and then also up to 50% on certain trading partners. Take a look at the White House's response earlier today.
The courts should have no role here. There is a troubling and dangerous trend of unelected judges inserting themselves into the presidential decision-making process. America cannot function if President Trump, or any other president for that matter, has their sensitive diplomatic or trade negotiations railroaded by activist judges.
Now, Levitt added here that these tariffs were a response to fentanyl pouring in through both borders of the U.S., mostly Mexico, of course, but also the fact that there needs to be a revival, which is part of U.S. manufacturing, which is part of why we're here today, which we'll get into a little bit. But first, here's Levitt's response on why these tariffs were implemented in the first place and different avenues to go around for trading policies. Take a look.
The president's trade policy will continue. We will comply with the court orders, but yes, the president has other legal authorities where he can implement tariffs. However, it does not dispute the fact that the president was right to declare a national emergency when it came to fentanyl and when it came to our crippling deficits and the lack of critical supply chains here at home. That is the reasoning for the president's tariffs, and the court didn't dispute those facts, by the way.
Now, this appeals court ruling is a pause on the lower court's ruling, and Levitt said that this will ultimately be settled with the Supreme Court. Tiffany?
And Jack, President Trump is speaking at the U.S. Steel Corporation tomorrow, where you are just outside of Pittsburgh. Now, this is after his approval of a partnership between U.S. Steel and Japan's Nippon Steel. What can we expect?
Well, we can expect a rally here. There's set to be a possible merger between Nippon Steel as well as U.S. Steel. Nippon was set to purchase U.S. Steel back in December of 2023. The shareholders of U.S. Steel approved it. But then President Biden, in one of his last acts of leaving office, stopped that deal from happening, saying that it would be a national security issue for the U.S. to lose this steel manufacturing. And President Trump, initially on the campaign trail, was aligned with President Biden on that, but later on changed his attitude, looking into this matter, and then finally deciding that a merger where Nippon Steel would invest in the U.S. Nippon into U.S. Steel would create about 14,000 jobs and upwards of $14 billion in investments here in the U.S. Tiffany.
All right, Jack, thanks for those updates. Democratic lawmakers are acknowledging that President Trump has the authority to impose tariffs, but insist that congressional approval is needed. Now they're trying to restrict the president's tariff powers. Our Washington correspondent Luis Ardoro Martinez has the details on this story.
There's no question that there's an economic emergency with respect to both uses that we had. One is we are in a world where China has killed over 1 million Americans with fentanyl poison.
The Trump administration defended its use of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, otherwise known as IEEPA, to impose tariffs on the Chinese Communist Party for its role in the fentanyl crisis. The White House was also critical of U.S. courts it alleges have weaponized the judicial system.
We invoked that rule to stop what has been 20 million illegal aliens streaming into our country, driving down wages, taking jobs away. That's an economic emergency. And on top of that, the world continues to steal about $1 trillion a year as measured by the trade deficit.
Democratic Attorney General of Arizona Chris Mays, who co-led the lawsuit against the Trump administration for its use of IEEPA, celebrated the court's ruling.
Essentially, all of the tariffs that Donald Trump engaged in under IEEPA, basically the April tariffs, are unlawful.
Democrats do not contest that the president has the powers to levy tariffs, but argue that the Liberation Day tariffs need congressional approval.
In its decision, didn't say that the president, whoever the president is, never can levy tariffs under IEEPA. But what the court is saying is the president does not have unbounded authority to levy these tariffs.
The Trump administration has already signaled that it will appeal the court's ruling and request a stay to the tariffs until the appeal is resolved. Democratic lawmakers are pushing for a congressional response to the court's ruling, like Congressman Greg Stanton, who posted on X that this ruling is a major step towards restoring economic sanity and bringing down costs for Arizonans. But the legal fight is far from over. Congress needs to pass my bill to reclaim legislative authority over trade policy. Republicans who control the House and the Senate are unlikely to put Congressman Greg Stanton's bill to a vote. Democrats would have to seek a privileged resolution, which they did attempt in early April and failed to reach the required number of signatures. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And will the tariffs ultimately go to the Supreme Court? Is there any precedent for using emergency powers that the Trump administration can build their case on? Tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, hear insights from Zach Smith, Senior Legal Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Tune into NTD's Capitol Report. Chaos continues to surround humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip as residents break into a warehouse looking for food. Meanwhile, officials in Yemen react to more Israeli airstrikes on the country's airport. NTD's Jason Perry brings us the latest.
Gunshots rang out as crowds of people broke into a warehouse to get food in the Gaza Strip. The UN's World Food Program said that initial reports indicated that 2 people died and several more were injured on Wednesday at the central Gaza warehouse. And on Thursday, other residents were seen carrying boxes of aid from a newly opened aid distribution center in the central Gaza Strip. One of the residents said she was frustrated over the situation.
I can't even walk, and when I came, they told me there is nothing left. Some have carts carrying boxes, and one cannot get 1 kilogram of flour or a bottle of oil. This is not right, I feel. Frustrated. What is this? This is chaos. Chaos.
Israel's ambassador to the UN, Danny Danon, commented on the recent security issues surrounding aid distribution in Gaza.
We don't run those centers. We provide security for the surrounding area. As for yesterday, it was the first day, there were a few riots. It took the American teams some time to take control of the situation, but I can say it out loud, we didn't shoot anyone over there.
Also on Thursday, the White House said that the U.S. sent a ceasefire proposal to Hamas that was backed and supported by Israel, and now they're waiting on Hamas to reply. At the same time, Israel continues to face attacks from the Iran-backed Houthi terrorist group in Yemen. Officials in Yemen reacted to new Israeli airstrikes on the country's main airport.
Targeting the airport and the last plane, which was the only hope for transporting patients, passengers, and pilgrims, has resulted in more than 70% of the Yemeni population being stranded and unable to travel from this airport.
And could Israeli forces soon strike Iran's nuclear facilities, while the talks for a nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran are still ongoing? President Trump said he told Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that now is not the time.
Yeah, I told him this would be inappropriate to do right now because we're very close to a solution. Now, that could change at any moment, could change with a phone call. But right now, I think they want to make a deal, and if we can make a deal, save a lot of lives.
Trump said that a nuclear deal between the U.S. and Iran could possibly happen in the next couple of weeks. Jason Perry, NTD News.
The Trump administration will begin revoking the visas of some Chinese students. Today, the State Department explained that it was reviewing the visas of students from Communist China for possible threats to national security. NTD's Arian Pasdar has the highlights from the press briefing.
Everyone who's here on a visa has to recognize, certainly is what they've seen over the last few months, that America takes their visas seriously.
The State Department says it's doubling down on protecting national security. On Wednesday night, Secretary Marco Rubio announced the department will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party and Chinese students studying in critical fields such as engineering, science, and mathematics. On Thursday, the State Department was asked how it will determine which students could have their visas revoked. Spokesperson Tammy Bruce pointed to the national security implications in discussing visa standards.
What we don't discuss, again, because of privacy issues, but also because it's different for each person, that there are a series of dynamics that can be applied, questions that can be asked, issues looked at, and we use every tool that we have to vet and to make sure we know who's coming in.
She also suggested that giving out too many details about how visas are being evaluated could allow people to game the process. The FBI warns on its website that the CCP uses its graduate students and postdoctoral researchers in critical fields to collect intellectual property, calling China the world's leading IP thief. The Bureau estimates the annual cost to the U.S. economy from IP theft, counterfeit goods, and pirated software is as much as $700 billion. And the State Department was also asked about the situation at Harvard University. A reporter wanted to know whether the administration is reviewing all Harvard affiliate visas, which could include professors and staff.
Again, I hesitate only because all of this is regarding visas and the nature of our mission is that the visa process is a key component of keeping the country safe. It is not targeted at certain only specific individuals. This is an overarching national security action.
This comes as the administration is seeking to revoke Harvard's certification to enroll international students. Officials have previously threatened to block the university from allowing foreign students. That's over allegations of coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party, allowing anti-Semitism on campus, and more. Arian Pasdar, NTD News.
A recent report by the Stanford Review suggests the CCP is carrying out a sophisticated spying campaign at the university. At times, the regime would incentivize students to gather sensitive information and report it back to China. Are everyday Americans aware of Beijing's influence on U.S. college campuses? And what do they make of the administration's move to revoke Chinese student visas? NTD's Sam Wong was out on the National Mall in D.C. to hear from the people.
Are you aware of China's infiltration on American college campuses?
Yeah, I am now. If you're going to come here and start doing, bad things, planning bad things, get out of here.
I'm not really aware of that, but I can see how it could possibly be done, in this day and time.
I mean, I had heard of it. I mean, I think to me, if you come to America, you should accept our values and our idea, our way of life.
Well, I know that a lot of funding that's going into universities and schools in the United States is coming from other countries. The main countries that funding is coming from is Russia and China. And that means that we're being infiltrated one way or another.
Yeah, the Trump administration has announced that they're going to revoke all student visas for Chinese international students. What are your thoughts on that?
I can't say I agree with that 100%. I think people should be vetted before they're allowed into the country. But once they are vetted and prove that they are not dangerous, that they should be able to stay.
My opinion is, we have to protect our, national security.
I mean, if they're going to be practicing communist things and spread communist propaganda, socialism, all that stuff, get rid of them. You're going to come here, you're going to follow our rules and laws. Simple. Very simple. It's common sense.
I don't think the overwhelming, we just have to cut them all out of our campuses and college in general. I mean, if we find out that they're, trying to infiltrate our country and, spread their ideals or, communist ideas and stuff, I mean, I don't think that's a good thing.
I think that it isn't our responsibility to give foreign nationals that could be working against us in near future clear education and lead above American citizens.
A federal judge today extended her temporary order that blocks the Department of Homeland Security from revoking Harvard's foreign student enrollment program. NTD's Arlene Richards has more.
Federal Judge Allison Burroughs on Thursday said she won't allow the Trump administration to make any changes to Harvard's ability to enroll foreign students. The ruling extends a prior emergency order issued a week ago by the same judge. The extension came despite the Department of Homeland Security's early Thursday morning notification to the court that it would give the university 30 days to challenge the revocation. The department had sent a letter to Harvard confirming its intent to withdraw the foreign student program. This was in response to a letter Harvard sent to the administration stating that it intended to comply with requests for information. The department's notice said it would give the school 30 days to prove it had previously complied with reporting requirements as a way of challenging the revocation, but said it is not a means to submit information or evidence that should have been previously provided as part of established reporting requirements. During the hearing, Burroughs asked the attorneys to work out an agreement to stop the revocation of the program. The Justice Department said its 30-day notice may make such an agreement unnecessary, but Harvard said it's being unjustly retaliated against. Burroughs said the school's First Amendment claims may still need to be resolved in court. The judge will leave the temporary order in place until it can be replaced by a preliminary injunction, which would block any changes until after a final decision has been made on the case. No date or timeline was discussed Thursday for when a formal injunction might be issued. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
The FBI is looking into a, quote, cover-up of the origin of COVID-19, according to FBI Deputy Director Dan Bongino. This as a new variant has been identified in the U.S., linked to an uptick of cases in China. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
FBI Director Dan Bongino posted on social media that the Bureau is, quote, actively investigating a possible cover-up of the origin of COVID-19. He posts, as we read and process reports of a new COVID strain emerging, I want you to know that we are actively investigating in multiple offices the cover-up of the origin of the COVID virus. You deserve answers. Bongino didn't name any specific entities or persons under investigation, and so far no formal announcement or other details have been released by the Bureau. NTD has reached out to the FBI for comment. The White House published a webpage in April titled Lab Leak: The True Origins of COVID. This site replaced the previous COVID.gov site. In 2023, then FBI Director Christopher Wray said that the Bureau made an assessment with moderate confidence that COVID most likely came from a lab incident in Wuhan, China. Chinese officials have continued to deny this. China announced last week that a new Omicron variant called NB181 is now the dominant variant spreading in the country. Also last week, the World Health Organization classified NB181 as a variant under monitoring. saying that it currently poses a low risk to public health. And U.S. cases for the new variant were first widely reported last week. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's airport screening program detected them in California, Washington State, Virginia, and the New York City area. This is according to the records posted by the CDC's airport testing partner, Ginkgo Bioworks. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
A British man has been charged after a car collided with dozens of people in Liverpool, injuring 79. The incident turned celebrations over a soccer Premier League victory into a tragedy. Police say they are working tirelessly to review all the evidence as part of the investigation. NTD's international correspondent Malcolm Hudson is in Liverpool with more for us.
A British man has been charged after a car ploughed into a crowd of Liverpool soccer fans during a victory parade on Monday. Chief Crown Prosecutor Sarah Hammond said 53-year-old Paul Doyle has been charged with 7 offences.
Dangerous driving, causing grievous bodily harm with intent, wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, and attempting to cause grievous bodily harm with intent.
The incident took place in Liverpool's packed city centre on Monday evening. Around 1 million people had come to celebrate Liverpool's Premier League soccer win, watching as an open-top bus paraded the team and its staff with the trophy through the city centre. At around 6 p.m, a car collided with dozens of people on Water Street, turning festivities into tragedy. Police previously said they believed the car was able to follow an ambulance crew attending to someone suffering a heart attack after a roadblock was temporarily lifted.
A total of 79 people were injured. We continue to be in contact with our officers and staff, and 7 people remain in hospital, receiving the expert care of our NHS colleagues.
Police confirmed the ages of those injured range from 9 to 78 years old. It's being treated as an isolated incident and not an act of terrorism.
I fully understand how this incident has left us all shocked and saddened, and I know many will continue to have concerns and questions.
She said detectives are working tirelessly to answer all those questions and will provide answers when they can. Crown Prosecution Service said the charges will be kept under review as the investigation progresses. Doyle was arrested on Monday and will appear before Liverpool Magistrates Court on Friday. Malcolm Hudson, NTD News, Liverpool.
The European Commission is rolling back key parts of its Green Deal agenda to boost the economy. Some experts believe policies from the Trump administration played a role in this turn of events. NTD's international correspondent David Vives reports from Paris.
For the past several months, the EU has cut off some parts of its Green Deal policy. The European Green Deal is a group of measures aimed at diminishing carbon emission across the Eurozone, with some regulations targeting EU industry. In April, the European Commission adopted a law designed to ease burdens on companies by reducing sustainability reporting and supply chain due diligence requirements. Officials said the move will help European businesses better compete with the US and China. Member of Parliament Barbara Bonte, who sits on the Committee on the Environment, filed a bill in support of rolling back Green Deal measures.
Another consequence of the Green Deal, which is very concerning, there's a lot of compliance, lots of more rules, a lot of administrative obligations, and a lot of bureaucracy. And bureaucracy is killing our economy and our wealth. I also filed a Dutch proposition as well to wipe out 30% at least of the administrative burden for companies. And different members of political groups supported our proposition. So I think things are changing there.
This month, the EU also proposed easing parts of its farming policy, potentially saving farmers up to $1.8 billion a year by relaxing rules protecting grasslands and wetlands. Some experts believe Brussels is facing pressure to scale back its green policies in response to President Trump's stance on climate and regulation. Bonte says one of the strongest incentives is the US drive to attract industry from Europe, a strategy the EU is now taking seriously.
So a major concern is the localization from our talent to, for example, the United States, because the United States is a better place for startups, for talent. So we are losing both our industry, both our talent.
One example came earlier this month when German carmaker Mercedes announced it would move production of its GLC SUV from Germany to the US.
And I think we really have to worry. For example, a very well-known example is the automobile industry, who used to be very strong in Europe. We all know the famous brands from Europe, like BMW, like Volkswagen, like Audi. But they announced, it is Volkswagen that announced they will close 2 factories, or some factories, and that has never happened before. So that's a whole new thing.
Bonte also says industry union pressure across the bloc is weighing on the EU to ease rules, following the example of the US. David Vives, NTD News, Paris.
Coming up, Secretary of State Marco Rubio announcing that the U.S. will begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party and those studying in critical fields. An author and survivor of Mao's Cultural Revolution joins us to discuss the significance of the move. And AI is fueling innovation and cyber attacks. Lawmakers met in Silicon Valley to tackle rising digital threats and how to fight back. David Lamb has the key takeaways after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Secretary of State Marco Rubio announced yesterday that the U.S. would begin revoking visas of Chinese students, including those with connections to the Chinese Communist Party or studying in critical fields. Joining us now to discuss is Xi Van Fleet. She's a survivor of Mao's Cultural Revolution and the author of Mao's America, A Survivor's Warning. Xi, thank you so much for joining us. Good to see you again. Now, the administration hasn't given us details on what their new criteria will be for visas, nor whether this will be a complete revocation of current visas. What do you make of the administration's decision here? Do you see this as an important step toward protecting Americans from CCP infiltration?
Absolutely. It's more than infiltration. It's really a frontal war, a war of espionage to get the technology they needed for building their own power, mostly power for their military and industrial.
Now, of course, not all Chinese students support the regime, and some apply for visas to study in a free environment. You yourself actually came here first as a student, and after the Tiananmen Square massacre, the U.S. offered Chinese dissidents studying here a path to permanent residency. Where do you think the balance lies here, as the government does have a duty to maintain national security?
Yes, I was a student, absolutely, with a lot of people like me coming here in the 80s and early 90s. And there's a big difference. Most of us lived under Mao's China and under communism. And we really, most of us, really long for freedom. And we appreciate the opportunity to come to study in America. And most of us adapted the democratic value, and most of us are anti-CCP. And that is a difference. And nowadays, a lot of the students come here, they're heavily indoctrinated by the government. And a lot of them came here with really a task to get information and technology and intelligence for the government. And that you cannot quite blame the students, because what the CCP did is launching what's called the People's War. You can't figure out which one will be the spy and which one will not be. And so I think it is the fault of the Chinese Communist Party that a lot of innocent students get affected. And it's not their fault, but it's the government's fault.
And when it comes to enrolling foreign students, the idea in part is to promote the exchange of ideas, values, knowledge, something that's meant to benefit both countries. But Communist China has shown over the years that it's willing to exploit these opportunities. For example, the FBI says the CCP uses its graduate students and postdoctoral researchers to, quote, operate as non-traditional collectors of intellectual property. Are the risks too high now for this kind of cooperation with the Chinese regime?
It's too high. And things has changed since my days in college, which was in the late 80s and early 90s. Nowadays, and what happened in our academia is that the communist ideology is taken over. And a lot of the students, they learned in China that America is bad. And they come here, they get the same idea from the college and university here that America is a racist country. That's why you see a lot of Chinese students, they got into the BMM protest, the pro-Hamas protest. And so this is not a problem just about CCP infiltration. It is a problem of our universities. And a lot of the professors either clueless or they are pro-CCP. They are more than happy to help the students get the technology they wanted and transfer to China. And we have this in Harvard, the dean of I think it's the chemistry department, and he was caught really transferred the technology to China. And now he just accepted a teaching position in Tsinghua University. So it's no longer a problem of CCP come here and infiltrate. It is also the enemy within.
As you mentioned, Charles Lieber right there, who was part of the 1,000 Talents program. Now, to your earlier point of the Chinese regime kind of impacting Chinese students and their ability to study here. Now, you've actually said in the past that when you first came here, you were under the influence of ideas installed in you by the Chinese regime. But over time, you became free of them and fully embraced American values. How often do you think this kind of transformation happens nowadays?
Well, before that was a simulation that we come here, I wanted to be American. And a lot of Chinese like me, we wanted to be part of this great culture. But today they came here and they learned about multicultural. They learned about their culture. Whatever culture is just as important and just as unique as American culture. America, not exceptional, no big deal. And that is really, again, I want to emphasize this. This is the problem, not just with the CCP, but with the Marxists that have control our universities. It's their problem as well. And communism now is everywhere. And then the students probably don't even know that what they're doing or the professors is helping not China, but the CCP.
Now, expanding on that, President Trump said on the campaign trail that he'd deny entry to the U.S. to all communists and Marxists using the Immigration and Nationality Act when it comes to protecting American values. Would this be a step in the right direction?
Absolutely. It's so needed. During the past 4 decades, at least three decades, we let in all sorts of people. We let in people who are the children and grandchildren of the CCP elite. And a lot of them are now either holding green card or citizenship. And they are actually a problem. And this is something that should have been done, and it is almost too late, but it absolutely need to be addressed right now. We let in too many people who have close tie to the CCP, and they are among us, and we can't tell who is who.
Xi Van Vliet, as always, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Artificial intelligence brings innovation for both people and perpetrators. According to cybersecurity experts, AI has accelerated cyber attacks. Lawmakers want to leverage and regulate AI, as well as strengthen cyber defense against foreign adversaries. NTD's David Lamb has more from a Homeland Security hearing.
On Wednesday, the U.S. House Committee on Homeland Security met at Hoover's Institution at Stanford University. Now they listened to expert panelists discuss the current landscape of cyber threats and how it affects the U.S.
Consider this. Every single day, Palo Alto Networks blocks up to 31 billion cyber attacks. Up to 9 million of those daily attacks represent novel attack methods never previously seen. To stay a step ahead, relentless innovation must be central to our cyber defenses. Innovation with AI at its core has the potential to disrupt the legacy status quo.
In my opening statement, I mentioned the example of a default password, where there are still products on the market that come out with the default password, and the expectation is that the end user of that product goes and changes the password. I'm sure we've all been there. We know that that doesn't always happen.
The risks that our country faces. So we need that stable baseline. We need to raise the level of security all over. Attackers are still taking advantage of very easily known vulnerabilities that should be fixed. And I agree that both software vendors and others in the community, there needs to be some accountability mechanisms in place to ensure that we're delivering secure and safe software.
Now, Silicon Valley was chosen as a place for the hearing because of the talent pool and innovation in the area. Now, the House committee, one of their highlights is making it more challenging and costly for hackers to hack.
Well, CCP, Chinese Communist Party, spends a lot of money and resources on developing its cyber defense, but also its cyber offense. And their offensive capabilities against us are very good. We need to be focusing on our cyber defense to make sure that we can plug up our vulnerabilities.
I think they're preparing for war. Yeah. The Chinese Communist Party is preparing for war in a number of ways, right? We see it with their massive buildup of their military forces, about a 44-fold increase. I know it may seem extreme to say this, but I believe that China is developing a first-strike nuclear capability against us.
The increasingly burdensome, costly, and duplicative requirements placed on our innovators are stifling our innovation and hindering our national security. Instead, we must continue to explore technological solutions for regulatory compliance and ways that we as Congress can help deconflict and simplify cyber regulations.
My priority is to really leverage the private sector, make sure that the federal government is as additive as possible.
Lawmakers and panelists are trying to get the reauthorization of CISA 2015. This law encourages the sharing of cyber threat information between private entities and the government. In Stanford, California, David Lamb, NTD News.
Coming up, new discoveries among the stars are bewildering researchers, from Neptune's possible new neighbor to a planetary system with the strangest orbit yet. Stay tuned for that after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Neptune just got a new neighbor, and a rare double star system with a bizarre orbit is making scientists scratch their heads. Here's the latest on new discoveries in the far reaches of outer space.
Move over, Pluto. A new dwarf planet may be on the block, or rather at the edge of our solar system. A team of researchers from the Institute for Advanced Studies School of Natural Sciences announced the discovery. The vast space beyond Neptune, but within our galaxy, was thought to be empty. But the new find is now considered one of the most distant, but still visible, objects in our sky. The celestial body is roughly 1/3 the size of Pluto, and may be large enough to be considered a dwarf planet. Much farther out in space, an unusual planetary system is making waves with its odd orbit. NASA science describes it as a possible perpendicular planet, and one of the strangest ever found. Typically, celestial bodies orbit in a flat plane around a star's equator. But not this one. The candidate planet, as it's called, orbits around two brown dwarfs. The two small bodies, a cross between planets and very small stars, orbit each other. It's already very unusual for a planet to orbit two stars instead of one. But the dwarf's companion planet takes that a step further, orbiting around them at a 90-degree angle, something unheard of until now.
And that's all for today's news. Round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.